The Me&Him podcast. Hey, Dad, and good afternoon, or should I say good morning?
Well, it's either.
Well, I heard you had a late night last night. A few friends came around?
Yes, they left early. We had a nice time, but I go to a lot of trouble to cook special meals for my guests, and I leisurely cleaned up over about 4 hours.
Wow. Yes, I've heard you potting around at 2 a.m. before when I've crashed there after one of your fantastic meals. So I'm sure they were suitably engorged and what have you. So that's cool. Well, it's a Sunday today. We were going to catch up on, I think it was Thursday, to record this episode, and I bailed on you this time. So thanks for making an allowance again to do Sunday. But the reason I bailed on you was because I had already missed one, what they call entree event to the men's table club I was telling you about. And I didn't want to miss this one. So I actually turned up and did this men's table meeting, found out about the organization. There were, must be about 20 different blokes there from all over the country. And it was really interesting, Dad. I mean, I'll tell you more about it maybe over the course of this episode. But
I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, it was, wow. It was, I don't want to say heavy because it was inspiring that there was an organization really helping men and growing so quickly. But it was hearing some of the men's stories when they did the introductions about their lives and where they've landed and, you know, what they need and their fractured relationships and this and that. I was like, what I thought my position was kind of like, not the best, but I've made the best of it. There are so many different shades of male trauma out there, Dad, and I was humbled at the end of it, to be honest.
I've had the same experience the one time I went to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. Various people got up.
They couldn't help you, or?
Well, no. I chose not to help myself.
Okay.
As per usual. But I was absolutely stunned at the level of honesty, both males and females, and the things they'd put themselves through and their families with their alcoholism. It just gave you goosebumps. And it was all real. And these people had conquered these tremendous violent addictions.
Look, I've been not to one of those groups, but in something similar. And sometimes you got to stop your jaw from hitting the floor when you're listening to some of these stories. And I guess, so it's all relative, right? And I guess for me, it made me a little bit anxious actually and excited because I've done a lot of work in this area over the last decade or two. And I figure I'm doing okay, have my wobbly moments. But when I look out there, the groundswell of men in need and struggling and trying to find a voice and trying to find a community, I actually can't really fathom the depths of it right now.
One of the problems is that men tend to keep things bottled up, you know, because they've got to be tough and they're logical, etc., etc. Women have an advantage because they're to a degree run by their emotions, and they're very, very happy to share their emotions with other women. And we as a particular gender, and I can only speak for Caucasians, tend to isolate ourselves, and we're in our own little prison. So it doesn't surprise me that some powerful stories came out last night.
Yeah.
Or the other night, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, the other night, yeah. So I'm going to investigate that further, and I think it's not only going to be really a wonderful thing to be a part of for me, but I want to be able to serve where I can as well. So hopefully that will go ahead and move forward. I also wanted to sort of just let you know one other quick thing I've been thinking about, and this idea of, it came through, I guess, the men's table, but of asking better questions of each other rather than use sport and weather maybe in this case.
Oh, no. Sport and weather are everything. Didn't you know that, son?
Well, you know, the typical, usually it might be sport, it might be, and actually that came up as a theme on this call that some guys said, I'm not into sport. So I find it really hard to communicate with groups of men sometimes. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can relate. You know, sometimes I wish there was an app where you could just check the latest sporting injuries and kind of rock up to the pub and go, oh, what about Johnson, huh? Yeah, shame he's out with the hammy.
It'll come, I'm sure.
That's right. Maybe that's our next $1 billion idea. All right. Well, good to have you here, even though it is a lazy Sunday, Arvo. Let's still have some fun. And we're going to kick off finding a little bit more about your uni life in just a second. The Me&Him podcast. So, we've been speaking a lot about men's stuff and fatherhood and manhood, which is fair, right? I mean, that's Me&Him is about that, right?
Well, we're two blokes, it's only to be expected.
Good on you, son. Yeah, we're really blokey blokes too. And I thought maybe it's time to just veer slightly off course and talk... Is it off course? I don't know, about women.
No, it's not off course.
It's kind of all in the same zone, isn't it, really? Because whilst the family lineage, we've been tracking that around granddad and great-granddad, and, we've made mention, and you've mentioned a couple of the role of the significant women have played in your life. And I think all of us are in that position in terms of our relationships with women. They should really be teaching us something. Good or bad, potentially.
Well, they try hard, but we're bad listeners.
We are bad listeners. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time filling in the other half, the yin or the yang, or whichever one it is. And I thought a good place to start would be going back.
Oh, by the way, how about the yearn or the burn?
It sounds like you get the burn if you've been playing the field a bit much, potentially. But
we won't go there.
Yeah, that's another episode. So I wanted to sort of go back to Grandma, because she was such a formative influence, I would imagine, in your life. Granddad for different reasons, and Grandma Jenny, such a lovely memory for me. Just smiles and fun, and she really loved her grandkids, right? And
yes.
And she seemed like a really wonderful woman. And from the sounds of things, she was quite either trapped or she was in a relationship that there wasn't going to be a quick exit from for whatever reason. And you've given me a little bit of insight into that, but I'd just like to understand from your perspective, particularly about what maybe some of your most vivid memories of Grandma are around that time growing up. Can you share a little bit about that?
I can, and the word vivid brings particular images to mind, but I think we'll cover them gradually.
No, well, look, up to you.
You did ask the question, and I'm answering it.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a very kind person and scrupulously clean. You could eat off her floors.
Okay.
Now, as I mentioned in the previous episode, the 50s were pretty, the post-war 50s were tough and rough. And my mother kept, even in austere, limited backgrounds. For example, the apartment they were in when I was born had no hot water, no electricity, just gas lamps. Was up a flight of about 30 wooden stairs. Was effectively 3 rooms. One was a kitchen. One was a general purpose, store things, and also have a tin bath, because that's how you kept clean. She literally heated up the water on the gas stove and poured it into the bath. And
just so you know, you've told that whole story before on this podcast, so I know your memory's not great, but I appreciate you repeating it to set the scene to talk more about Grandma.
I'm sorry about that, son. I mean, I'm 80 and...
I'm just calling it before it went on for another 10 minutes, and I'm like, it's not so much.
No, that's fine. Okay, have you stopped recording at this point?
No, we're going to keep going now. Yeah, we're going to roll with the punches here. So what do you remember most about her specifically?
She was very attractive. She was hardworking. She was kind, and she did her best to look after her man, who was a hard worker. But unfortunately, when he drank too much, he couldn't control his temper, which is one of the scars that I take as a legacy is a bad word, but I'll use it, from my childhood, because I saw the fights over the dinner table, and I heard some of the repercussions afterwards, and my mother crying and so forth. And I was a lonely little only child, and I didn't realize it was damaging me, and it did, which is one of the reasons why I am a passionate advocate against domestic violence.
Yeah.
There's no excuse to beat up a woman. Yes, sometimes they've got viper-like tongues, but you just have to learn to roll with the punches and don't use your fists.
There is this, and I want to circle back to Grandma in a second, but there is this balance between, or a seesaw between emotion and intelligence, right? And the higher the emotion, the lower the rational capabilities, I guess. And I can imagine when, especially, well, not just Granddad, but any bloke, and blokes today who drink too much and are carrying a lot of emotion, it comes out, and even though you maybe know that there are some serious repercussions for acting in a certain way, it was like the bottle's uncorked, and all this emotion and anger and hurt comes out. I don't know. Does that have any resonance to what you saw with Granddad? I mean, was he
Yes.
struggling inside?
It was only when I was much older I could look back on my father with compassion and realize that he had demons. I was too young then.
Yeah.
And our young, we have a responsibility to bring them up in a secure, loving environment. And you don't have a secure, loving environment where there's domestic violence.
Yeah.
And it scars everyone.
So understood, and I can understand that would have been quite a frightening scenario, I imagine, for Grandma at times. But let's look at more the positive side. What was she most passionate about? What was she most into? What brought her joy?
Well, she worked for a firm called Clipple & Sons in Hobson Street, and they had a factory, and she was a cutter. So after school, I'd join her, and she'd take me home later. And I got to see as a very young child what happens in the fabric industry when they're cutting vast layers of the same coloured fabric with a chalk profile on the top into 20 dresses or 40 something or others. And she was very, very good at her job. And I didn't know until a long time after her death, when I was helping my dad sort out things, and he'd already thrown out half the family heritage anyway when he lived on his own. And I found this letter dated mid-50s from a company in London asking my mother to come and join them, and then paying her fares to go right across the world to cut for them because she was so good.
Oh, wow.
And I just went, wow.
So she was pretty talented. She was passionate about, very industrious by the sounds of things.
Oh, very, very clean, and a very good cook. She learned, or she wasn't when she met my dad, funnily enough, and I'll tell you about the circumstances of her origin later. My dad, coming from the Dalmatian side, actually was quite a reasonable cook, and she picked up on all of the Dalmatian dishes, which she used to cook for us, because my dad liked them, and they were my heritage as far as cooking was concerned. I didn't realize, and stop me if I've already said this, how absolutely bland the cooking which came to the colonies from England was.
Yeah, you did. You've made some reference on that, but it's I understand that she's become probably inherited a bunch of that sort of knowledge, maybe from what great-grandma?
My dad taught her.
Oh, well, did he really? Okay.
Yeah, and she became a better cook than him, and she was very kind and loving. That's why you grandchildren have fond memories of her. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I remember like Granddad was always the grumpy old Slavic dude. He would occasionally bust out a smile, and I remember I got a couple of photos of riding on his back in the backyard, and where he was probably half cut, after drinking his own supply for half the day in the sun with us, And
you're speaking about the family now.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's where it all started, right? But I do remember her being the light and the smiles and the laughter. And I remember one particular time we were all sitting around having her famous trifle, I think it was. and she'd had a few sherries herself, and she ran out there. So there was some song playing, and she was skipping away, and she lifted up her dress and sort of flashed her petticoat or her undies, sort of saying "whippy," and dancing around the house, and we all thought it was a bit A, risque, and B, very old worldly, but C, hilarious, because Granddad's sitting there going, "Get women back in the kitchen, woman, get her back." She's just...
Now that you brought that subject up, I remember when they used to have parties in the 50s, because I used to stay up late then and sort of lie on the couch while the adults were having a few drinks and chats, and they might turn to a particular station on the radio. And with her Scottish heritage and a few drinks, she loved to do the Highland Fling. And
that's what it was. That was what it was. Yes,
as a young lad, I was always so embarrassed when she did it.
Well, we thought it was hilarious. We're like, good on the old gal, because she looked like she was a grandma to us, not a mum. It's a little bit different.
Oh, look, as I grew up, I became more. I developed a sense of humour looking back at those memories.
Yeah.
But when you're just a young kid,
oh, totally.
You don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice, just to sort of get a bit of a fix again on Grandma. She was a lovely individual, and obviously important in terms of her influence on you and your expectation of, I guess, a female partner, or maybe qualities of. Do you think she played any role in what you looked for past that point for a female partner?
Son, you've triggered a memory. I've been divorced 50 years, and as you know, I've had a few try before your eyes during that time. I've known a lot of women, and every woman I've loved I still respect, even though we've broken up. And I think the women in my life have made the man that you see now. Because I've learned so much from them. But as is normal, you meet someone at a party and you click and you go out and whatnot. You don't give them a checklist of things, are you like my mother in this way or that way? Every single one of them has turned out to be scrupulously clean. And I have never asked that question
there we go.
During the intimate beginnings and so forth.
Spooky. Yes, I think there's something to be said for, it's the same with women and their fathers. They want to replicate what's familiar. I think men do as well. That was really interesting, and I appreciate the enlightening around Grandma. I also just had a memory triggered, and it's about finding comfort in women, which is more of my story, and I'm going to share that next. The Me&Him podcast. So while we're on the subject of women and girls, I thought I would just take a trip down memory lane myself, back to when I was a fresh-faced, little lost 6-year-old boy, and looking for someone to nurture me. Right, that sounds pretty deep and mournful and sad.
Never mind.
But look, when I've alluded to this or touched on this a little bit previously, but there were a lot of times where I was sort of out on my own, just to take my bike around, trying to fill in my own time, sometimes getting into mischief and what have you. But one of my very early memories, and I remember is a person, and that's Rachel Smith, my first girlfriend that I can remember at 6 years old. Her family lived up the road, and we used to hang out, walk hand in hand, and spend all our time together after school. And I think there was even might have been some doctors and nurses, but a very innocent kind in those days. And right from that age, everyone thought I was a little bit of a Casanova. They're like, oh, look at this kid, he's got a little girlfriend, isn't that cute?
You haven't changed that, have you?
Well, yeah, that's a different story. But anyway, the point I'm making is I was lucky enough, I guess, to have a little female companion. But then once Rachel moved on, there was Linda at school, who was my girlfriend for 2 or 3 years, serious girlfriend too, and would spend a lot of time with her. And got into a little bit of mischief as well. And then a little bit older again, there was Jane, and it kept going, Dad. It was female companion girlfriend after female companion girlfriend, and I didn't think too much of it. I guess I was just focused on women's company. And it wasn't until much, much later in life where I had spent 30 or 40 years just chasing women around and trying to get them to like me and be with me and commit to me, and having those relationships end, and then having to learn.
And hang on, during that course of time, you got married.
Yes.
I remember being there. Mm-hmm. And I remember having a few drinks with your father-in-law.
Yep.
And I remember the two of you actually walking in from the sand into the sea.
That's right, yeah. It's down at Nelson Park, or it's right in the city.
Exactly.
Sydney City. Yeah. It was beautiful. Yeah, that was, look, I'm not going to take anything away from those magical moments. Getting married back at that time with all family and friends around was wonderful, and spent a good period of time, I think 20 years or 16 years from that point with Helen, and resulting 3 wonderful kids. Then that ended, and there was another woman in my life, and I've got to a point now, and I'm single at the moment. I just want to reach out. Is there any women listening to this?
No.
want a nice
don't
guy?
Listen to him. Girls, go.
I'm available.
You've got better choices. Go somewhere else.
I'm not doing the podcast for that reason, Dad. It is for men. But I wanted to make a final point on that, and that is it's only through the passage of time and through reflection that I've looked back and realized that I was seeking comfort and safety through women. And
Sure.
I didn't realize how dependent that had become, or how codependent I'd become on being validated by a woman, and to some degree outsourcing some of the things I needed to be learning or showing up in my life to them.
It's not uncommon, son. I mean, there are other men with whom that will resonate.
Well, look, it's been a journey I've taken, and part of the last, I don't know, 5 years, potentially 10 years, is me looking at how I'm living my life as an individual and finding happiness within myself and a sense of worthiness and not needing someone else to make me feel more complete. And I didn't realize that was an issue for me. And when I did, I thought it's actually quite a big one, to have to make sure that you are fulfilled already, not necessarily without needs, but just happy and whole to the degree that anyone can be, so that you're not usurping the energy or trying to control or exert or complete something within yourself through a partner. Because it's always, look, it's probably the pattern of dysfunction that I've carried from relationship to relationship, to be honest with you. And I don't want to keep doing that. Hence the reason maybe I'm single right now and focused on myself.
I admire your honesty. It takes balls to say what you've just said.
That's good to know.
I can relate to that in my different way, because my times were different. I did something similar. I needed, and I didn't know at the time, I needed to establish my identity through another person, and that was usually a female. And I have the utmost admiration for all those beautiful females who stopped to spend some time with me. I thank them.
I totally agree. Dad, the biggest lessons I've learned, unfortunately, have been the ones that hurt the most, and they were the ones that came from a relationship not working out. And I was just thinking the other day, the one thing that you want to be able to say to yourself at the end of a very painful relationship, where it's easy to blame the other person and make them the source of all evil.
That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, and how, and that feeling of righteousness, like this is my story. And I've been in the pits of despair and blaming everyone else and what have you. I know I have, right? So we all do at times. But the thing that you have to be able to say yourself, I believe, is without that, I wouldn't have learnt this important thing about myself.
Couldn't agree more.
So it's a lesson in the end if you choose to make it one. And maybe one of the most important lessons you needed to learn, and you refuse to do it any other way, and that's how you had to learn, unfortunately, huh?
It sounds familiar, son.
Oh, sucks, doesn't it? So
like father, like son.
Yeah.
What a worry.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a related men's thing. We know each other's lives pretty darn well, and so see things reflected in each other's lives a generation apart. But even like I was referring to this on this talk with the men's table, these 18 complete strangers all said things that resonated directly with me, and all they're saying different things. One was a younger kid who was maybe 22, who felt ostracized by his people his own age, and found that older men with life experience were interested in him, and it's the first time he felt someone was interested in him and could be himself and relax. And even that made me think about myself. Probably because I'm an egotist. That's always thinking about me.
No, not you. Oh.
Did I mention before I'm single out there? So if there's anyone knows any lovely ladies,
forget it. Yeah. This is not a bloody matrimonial advertisement.
I've tried all the dating apps, so I figured maybe the podcast is my next venture. But hey, speaking of dating, I am struggling, or I have been struggling, but I'm cool with that. I'm happy to be whole and by myself for a while. But you were telling me just before that you threw out a call to, I don't know, some website for elderly women. Tell me that story, because you didn't go into great detail, but I'm interested.
Okay, it harks back to what we've discussed before, the mat crap. All the writing that I've done, songs and poems and so forth, for decades. I've had a couple of my Weird and Wonderfuls produced in the musical environment, and one of them is on YouTube. And I thought it was bucket list, but it looks like it might be one of many.
Right.
But all my time, and this dates back to being an only child, when I realized that I needed to write, and I actually had music form in my head when I was at university, and I didn't study music. I was in science. And I can remember how interesting it was to have a complete orchestra playing inside my head. And, I'm a pop music guy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, so I thought, I wonder if there's a mature woman out there who is kind of more of a musician whom I could connect with on an empathetic friendship, emotional, working together.
Sorry, a younger woman,
level.
Did you say?
No, a mature woman.
Okay. Got you. You're one much older than 80. Okay. You take any age.
My cutoff point is 65. All women under 65 is pedophilia.
Okay,
as far as I'm concerned.
Good, you got a floor.
You got to have some principles.
Yeah, right.
So I joined this mature dating site, and even before I'd given them a proper profile, I was inundated with women from overseas and exotic backgrounds, as well as a few Caucasian women, wanting to date, wanting romance, which is not what I went on the site for.
Now, are you sure these aren't Indian scammers sort of plying you with, massaging your ego with fake profiles?
Anything's possible in this AI, open source AI world, son. But it got to the point, it was such a deluge that I just cut it off. And that whole process took about a week.
God, you're on fire, aren't you? Look at that. So maybe I'm in that twilight zone between, I'm not good for a Tinder date because you got to be sort of 25 and under, but I don't qualify for the 80 and over, where there seems to be only women left alive, and any guy that's left is just attacked by a swarm of piranhas.
Some of these presumably fake personas, but designed to be very alluring.
Oh wow!
And we're in your age zone. I mean, there was some in the 50s.
Yeah. You know what, Dad, just on that, and congratulations, and I understand what you're saying about having to turn off the fire hose there.
I had to. It was ridiculous.
But just on that note, one of the things that I found really sad was when I did venture out and start speaking to a couple of people. I'm a pretty technically literate, or I'm good with computers, good with technology. And I actually got scammed by someone preying on me being a bit lonely and having someone show interest in me and wanted me to send something, to do something because of this reason, what have you. And I checked all the way and did all the sort of relevant, I followed all the relevant steps, other than if it sounds too good to be true, it is. I didn't follow that one because I guess I was a bit vulnerable at that time. And I got scammed by $100. It cost me $100. Someone picked it up, and that profile then popped up at another single site. I saw same picture with a different caption the next week, even though it was reported and what have you. So I just made me realize how these insidious scammers just prey on, whether it be you're an old person or whether it be a lonely guy or whether it be, they're just preying on these vulnerabilities to take dollars out of your pocket. I'm not saying that happened to you, but that was eye-opening for me that even someone like me can get in that position.
Son, I don't have the evidence to back this up, but I genuinely believe that the criminals are better than we are at using the new technology.
Well, absolutely. I think they have to be. That's where you make money now as a crim. It's all online. It's all cyber warfare, and hence the reason there's so much money in people being trained up on cyber right now to hold the fort, I guess, to guard the gate, all that. So, hey, look, there's a little bit of a touch on women and all things partnership and vulnerability and all of that. Kind of an interesting take, a little bit of a different topic for our chats. Well, actually, is it a different topic for our chats? We talk about all sorts of stuff, don't we?
No, I mean, do you want to hear about another episode that was very, very successful?
Well, depending how long it is, Dad, because we're at 40 minutes right now.
Oh, it only take 2 or 3 days, son.
Well, I've got some good news for you, Dad.
Yes.
So, when we started talking about this podcast, maybe a couple of years ago, or maybe you don't know, but I was thinking about it then. I saved a whole bunch of emails to my computer at the time, went through them all, found some good ones. I found about 50, which was a small representation of, the megatons that were there. And I put them in a folder on my computer. And I went to try and get them out over the last couple of weeks, and they were all locked, and there was some security issue with them, and I couldn't download them. I'm like, oh man, all that work I did to put them together. Anyway, I managed to unlock it with my amazing technical nous, and I have access to my folder of saved emails now. So I found one from the archives. Exciting, huh?
Wow.
Emails from Dad. Yeah. So this one is actually from November 29th, 2020, at a reasonable time, 10:30 at night. And you had basically copied us in from an email from your producer, mate, Danny. And the email title was First Pass, the Basic Skeleton. And you were basically introducing us to what you called your protest song. The very first of many iterations. You actually attached it for feedback as well. And you talked about there being a choir and a few other bits involved. And we were like, oh God, what's he up to now? That was 3.5 years ago, I think. What has happened since then?
It was around about COVID, wasn't it?
I think it was COVID, yeah. Yeah, it was around that time, like 2020. So that I found this email, just popped up, was the first one I opened, and I thought, you know what? I heard you mention something about that recently. Tell us a story about that and where that's at.
Well, the beginnings of the song actually came to me in university, and they concern Shakespeare. The song's actually called Winter of Discontent. Mm-hmm. Which is one of Shakespeare's novels. And it sort of lay around, and every couple of decades I'd add something else to it by inspiration, until around about COVID, or just before COVID, I thought, I've always wanted to be a songwriter in companion with someone else, and the opportunity, it never ever arose. So I was directed by a friend to the talent, and ended up with 2 producers, both lovely people with different skill sets, and got it done. It was, for my age, a bucket list thing. I needed to get from this morass of fragments of poems and songs something together, and something which was relevant to the context of the times out, and we finally did it.
Good on you. Yeah, and so I didn't realize it had gone back. The seeds of that stretched so far back.
Yeah, to when I was 16.
So it's great, and you knew it was important to do, but it just wasn't the right timing, or didn't have the right companions, or what have you.
Well, when I looked around pre-COVID at what was happening in the world, I realized and it was unfinished at that stage, but I didn't need much to finish. it was a direct reflection of the times. And so I thought, to hell with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it cost me $28,000 because I never dealt with anyone in the music industry before, and I paid for it all in order to have the copyright.
Right.
But it's out. And,
good on you.
We've got it on YouTube.
Cool. So you're right if I put a link to it on the show notes? Well, it's on YouTube, I guess, so it's really available to everyone.
Yeah, no, do what you like, son. Nothing embarrasses me these days.
Well, just give us, do you remember any of it off the top of your head?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to give us a line or two from it, just to give us a sample to whet the appetite for people to click through?
Well, it's very Shakespearean at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the winter of our discontent. Dreams born in summer lie twisted and bent. Then we move on again. Sleep that knits the ravelled sleeve of care is not there. Peace on earth for all of us to share is not there, etc.
Ooh, there we go, folks. Opens up a whole doorway into the wonderful world of Mac crap. But this is the stuff that's been polished and released. Look, interesting to see that look, congratulations is what I need to say here, because to push something out that's important and make it happen. And I remember someone saying once, if all ideas were worth millions, all librarians would be billionaires. You know, information is everywhere, but the actual nous to put effort and money and time and passion and drive behind it, that is true artistry to deliver on a goal like that.
It became a passion, son, and bucket list is the correct term.
Cool. Well, we'll find out more about your other bucket list items that I know you've got a bunch of buckets hanging at the edge of that cliff.
Yeah, I keep tripping over them.
Oh, well, good stuff, Dad. Well, look, that was fun. Let's wrap it up. The Me&Him podcast. Well, you said back in episode 1, Dad, that women, we wouldn't be here without them, and never has a truer word been spoken. But there also is that other famous quote by Bob Marley, "No woman, no cry."
Yes, it's gain and pain in equal measure.
So it's been good to reflect a little bit about I guess the relationship with women and the lessons learned. I think that's a big thing for me that's come out of today and the big thing that's come out of my life.
We've only just touched on it.
I agree. But the lessons that relationships give you to further strengthen your own sense of self and independence. And I hate to say that, it sounds like it's a less than sort of conversation, but the reality is we've all got to be honest with ourselves sometimes and go, okay, am I as integrated as I could or should be to have the relationship that I most desire?
Big topic. We'll have to address it later.
Yeah, I guess so. But look, I'll put that link below to your protest song. And I did send you the latest kind of produced version of the song that we've been working on together, which you seem to like, which is good. You're
doing very well. I'm very impressed.
Well, now I'm a big time producer as well. So I'm going to actually cover that, I think, for the next Emails with Dad next episode, because that song's come together. I might even do a little bit of a preview clip of it if I can work out the tech. But it's been great to chat, Dad. What are you up to for the rest of the Arvo?
Rearranging my life, because whenever I have guests, I have to put all my papers away.
Oh yeah, the clean up.
Yeah, to clear the table and do everything nice. And now I've got to dig them up from wherever they are and have a look at the week ahead and make sure that I fulfill all my appointments.
Wow, there we go. It's a busy life at 80. Lots of entertaining and hijinks. We'll leave it there, Dad. We'll look forward to chatting to you in the next couple of days.
Likewise, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The Me&Him podcast.